Hello everyone and welcome to Farm Bureau's Voices of Agriculture. This week coming to you from the state of Mississippi. On the show this time we take a look at the farm-raised catfish industry here in the state. Mississippi leads the nation in catfish production, but the industry is having some problems lately. We also look at an advertising campaign designed to promote Mississippi agriculture to the general public. And finally, we look at the issue of eminent domain to acquire land for economic development. There will be an initiative on the ballot in November to try and put a stop to the eminent domain abuse. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
When was the last time you were responsible for feeding 155 people? If you're a Mississippi farmer, the answer is easy. It was yesterday. That's right. The technology used in farming today maximizes crop yields and protects the land for generations of farmers to come. There are lots of ways and lots of jobs that keep Americans safe, and I'm proud of the role that Farm Families of Mississippi has in providing a safe, affordable source of food and fiber for your family.
The Farm Families of Mississippi.
Farm-raised catfish is the largest aquaculture industry in the United States. Mississippi is the largest catfish producing state with over 200 catfish farms producing about $200 million worth of catfish annually. Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, and Louisiana produce about 95% of all the catfish in the nation, with Mississippi leading the way with nearly 55% all by itself. But the industry has been having problems for the last few years and has been downsizing quite a bit.
Dr. Jimmy Avery is the Extension Aquaculture Leader for Mississippi State University. He says you can break down the cause of the problems into three segments.
One, of course, is high feed prices. You know, our catfish feed is made up primarily of grain products, so as those grain products go up, so does the price of our feed. The second reason would have to be just cheap foreign imports. They've come in here and really taken a large part of our market share and are considerably less expensive. And so they've kind of eaten away at some of this market. And the third would just have to be just a general downturn in the economy. An awful lot of our fish is eaten out in restaurants, and so as people go out less and that demand is less, and as that demand goes down slightly, then that price comes down. And we've seen this kind of trend really starting probably back in about 2002.
That's about when imported fish started becoming an issue. Fish importers, mainly from Vietnam, had no luck selling their fish product in the United States under such names as white roughy and river cobbler. However, when the importers began calling their fish catfish, their sales picked up immediately. In a span of 18 months, Vietnamese frozen fish fillets replaced over 23% of the small catfish fillet market previously held by U.S. catfish processors. And that's affecting catfish farmers like Wayne Hill of Belzona.
There's so much overseas marketing coming in that, well, we can't really compete with overseas marketing. The prices that they can raise fish are a lot cheaper than we can, but we can raise them a whole lot healthier than they can. They're sending in, our government's letting them bring in fish that are contaminated with pesticides and, you know, antibiotics and stuff that we can't use here in this country, which we wouldn't use if we could use it because it's dangerous to the public. So we're losing out. We're fighting a really hard battle to try to stay in the catfish industry, but it's getting harder and harder every year.
Hill and his family have been in the catfish business since the late 70s, and they have had to severely cut back the size of their farm.
Well, at one time we were over 700 acres of ponds, about 58 ponds, and we probably shut down half of our operation now. In fact, right now we've got guys on bulldozers and land planes smoothing out pond levees now to put them back in row crops. We'll be planting soybeans and corn in them this spring.
At its peak, Mississippi had about 120,000 acres of catfish ponds.
We're down now to around 55,000 acres, but probably about 42,000 of that is food fish acres, and the other 13,000 acres is fingerling production. We are the largest producer of fingerlings in the U.S., so we supply a lot of other states with fingerlings. So that number of acreage for fingerlings has remained fairly constant, but it's that acreage devoted for food fish that has really declined.
To help combat the problem of imported fish, the industry wants to get a continuous inspection program administered by the USDA Food Safety Inspection Service, like the ones used by the meat and poultry industries.
The industry felt they would be better protected from some type of product scare As far as food safety goes, they really felt they would be better off under a continuous inspection program. So even though that was passed in 2008, we're 2-3 years out now, and we're still working with FSIS to kind of get this implemented and in place.
Having a system like this in place will definitely affect importers of foreign fish.
Anything that our processors have to go through in this country, there would have to be an equivalent system in place in that country that's interested in exporting product into this country. So if we had a certain set of regulations that went all the way back to the farm, as we would have under continuous inspection, there would have to be that same process in these other countries as well. Or they wouldn't be able to import into this country anymore.
For local farmers like Wayne Hill, they're just trying to hang on.
We're a hard-headed bunch of people. We're regular Delta farmers, so we're going to do our best to stay in business. If they can be educated on this, what they're eating, maybe we'll have a better chance of staying in business, because, common sense will tell you what to eat and what not to eat. So you got to understand what you're putting in your mouth.
We'll be back with more right after these messages.
A row crop farmer from the Delta, a sweet potato farmer from northeast Mississippi, and a blueberry farmer from the southern part of the state. What do these farmers have in common? They all joined Farm Bureau, the most powerful and respected farm organization in Mississippi today. Farming draws its strength from the land and the people who work the land. Similarly, Farm Bureau's strength is at the grassroots level and the 82 county farm bureaus that make up the Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation. This is where the most important work of Farm Bureau takes place, at the county level. Policy development and policy execution are what set Farm Bureau apart from many organizations. The best legislative influence comes from informed, concerned farm families communicating their beliefs to their elected representatives. Farm Bureau's role on both the state and national levels is to keep Farm Bureau members informed with good, factual information concerning Farm Bureau policies and farm issues. During the legislative sessions, regular reports on the status of agricultural bills affecting farm families are made available through the weekly newsletter, Capital Comments. Timely advice is given in these newsletters on action needed at a given time. Through the Farm Bureau structure, beginning at the county level and proceeding through the state and national levels, producers annually evaluate the problems of agriculture and rural living and make recommendations to formulate Farm Bureau policy. The Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation, leading, representing, and serving Mississippi agriculture.
Agriculture is Mississippi's #1 industry, contributing nearly $7 billion directly to the Mississippi economy each year. It's the single most important industry in our state, but many people take it for granted because they've never gone to the store and seen the shelves empty. The efficiency and productivity of the American farmer has actually worked to his disadvantage.
The American consumer is so used to having a safe and abundant supply of food that it never occurs to them that it might not always be there.
To help combat this problem of the public taking agriculture for granted, the Mississippi Farm Bureau spearheaded an effort to raise the level of appreciation of the work farmers do and the benefits that agriculture provides to the general public. The campaign is organized under the name Farm Families of Mississippi, and there are over 75 organizations, businesses, and individuals that have contributed to the effort so far. The crusade debuted in 2010 with only enough money to saturate the Jackson media market for 12 weeks. Our spots highlighted areas where surveys showed that the public was misinformed or underinformed.
In some countries, families spend up to half their income on food, while here in America, we spend about 10%, just 10%.
Through best practices and modernization, Mississippi farmers continue to be good stewards of our land and water resources.
These spots, combined with billboards all over the metro area and appearances on talk radio, helped carry the message that agriculture is vital to the public. The second year of the campaign saw a huge increase in the number of participating sponsors, which allowed us to branch out to other urban areas of the state. We chose the Gulf Coast and ran our TV spots there for a 12-week run.
Americans spend only about 10% of their disposable income on food. In some countries, it's 50%.
Mississippi beekeepers provide a safe, abundant, and affordable supply of honey to homes and restaurants statewide.
And I'm proud of the role that Farm Families of Mississippi has in providing a safe, affordable source of food and fiber for your family.
The Farm Families of Mississippi.
Both the Jackson and Gulf Coast TV stations allowed us to host a short cooking segment on one of their talk shows. These segments highlighted a Mississippi commodity and some facts about agriculture.
You know, one of the things that I find that most people don't know is just how many beef farmers and ranchers we have in our state. We have over 14,500 farmers in this state producing quality beef, not just for you, but for their own families, because 97%, which surprised me when I read the research, 97% of all beef ranches and farmers are family-run operations.
Right. And that's probably something Wanda can address,
yes,
because you're a catfish farmer yourself, your family is.
Right.
So why is it so much better? What is it about that farm-raised catfish?
Well, because of the feed and stuff and the way we treat our catfish. I was telling them it's a 24/7 job to raise catfish.
There have also been other promotions, such as the one with the Mississippi Braves. The M Braves are the AA affiliate of the Atlanta Braves and play in Pearl. This year, we hosted 2 Farm Families Nights at the ballpark. More than 6,000 people attended the games, where local farmers passed out Farm Families of Mississippi refrigerator magnets and recipe cards featuring Mississippi commodities. We also had our TV spots played on the Jumbotron in center field, and farm facts were read over the PA system between innings. We also purchased a banner that hangs in the stadium all year long. Our follow-up survey shows that we have made great strides in educating the public about agriculture and the benefits that it provides them. Nearly half the people surveyed believe that Americans spend a smaller percentage of their income on food than other countries. This is a true statement, but only 37% believed it before our campaign began. Over 85% agree that food produced in America is safer than foreign-produced food. That figure has remained fairly constant. Upwards of 75% of the public believe that Mississippi farmers take proper care of their animals. The rest were uncertain or had no opinion. No one stated that they believed farmers mistreated their animals. This has been a strong component of our campaign, and it appears to be achieving our goals. A 9% increase was measured for individuals who usually try to find and buy locally grown specialty crops. And those that were asked to identify what a specialty crop was listed sweet corn, sweet potatoes, pecans, and honey. Those were the exact 4 that we featured in our ads. To sum it all up, we feel that this campaign has had a tremendously successful second year. The marketing research firm has stated it is clear that these messages had a strong impact in Mississippi Farm Bureau's media campaign. Our next goal is to expand into the Memphis media market. We know what messages the public needs to hear. We know how to deliver it. The results have been extremely positive so far. The only thing holding us back is funding. The more money we have, the bigger the impact on public understanding of agriculture we will make. To find out more about this Ag Image campaign or to become a sponsor, visit our website at www.growingmississippi.org.
We'll be back with more after this timeout. Stay with us.
Farm Bureau, a voluntary organization of farmers and ranchers, had its beginning with the county agricultural agents and the Extension Service in the early part of the 20th century. In time, county farm bureaus gave rise to state farm bureaus. A national organization, the American Farm Bureau Federation, was formed in Chicago in 1919. In those days, farmers had problems with marketing and monopolies. People living in rural areas felt they lacked equality with folks living in the cities. The goals then are the goals now, to improve farm income and rural life. The Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation strives to meet these goals by offering our members many different programs and services, such as public policy development, young farmer leadership development, safety education, and many others. Every Farm Bureau member receives our bi-monthly magazine, Mississippi Farm Country. In every issue, you can read about the latest news in farm production, interesting articles about rural Mississippi, Farm Bureau organization news, even a Solve the Mystery challenge. You can also learn all about the extra benefits that you can take advantage of just by being a Farm Bureau member. The Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation, leading, representing, and serving Mississippi agriculture.
Family traditions are never more important than when families gather around the dinner table to celebrate special occasions. Farm families of Mississippi share the bounty of the harvest with families throughout the state and even the nation. Chances are that your gatherings include delicious sweet corn, baked sweet potatoes, and a rich golden pecan pie. Buy Mississippi-grown products. It's good for your family and it's good for Mississippi. The Farm Families of Mississippi.
On November 8th, the voters of Mississippi will have the opportunity to vote on an initiative that will severely limit the use of eminent domain for anything other than a true public use. This issue has been settled in many states across the country, but Mississippi voters are just now getting the chance to make their opinion known. Here's a synopsis of the problem and the solution. Eminent domain is the power to take private property for public use by national and state governments, municipalities, other government entities, and other parties to whom the power has been delegated. This concept is contained in the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. It protects your right to own private property and prevents undue taking of that property except for public use. That has traditionally been defined as highways, schools, utilities, railroads, and other government-owned and operated projects for the public good. But in 2005, the U.S. Supreme Court held in a 5-4 decision in Kelo versus the City of New London that this Connecticut city could take away people's homes and turn the property over to a private party that would develop the property for its own profit. The court justified this result because the increased tax revenue on the property would benefit the public, and the use of the property was, therefore, a public use. Suzette Kelo, one of the homeowners whose property was being taken, just wanted to keep something that was incredibly important to her: the first house she ever owned. The Pfizer Corporation wanted to build a research facility there, and the City of New London used the power of eminent domain to evict all the families that owned land on the tract that the Pfizer Corporation wanted.
Over 10 years ago, I was lucky enough to find a great deal on a house with a terrific view of the Thames River, the Long Island Sound, and the Atlantic Ocean in New London, Connecticut. I spent every spare moment fixing it up and making it the kind of home I had always dreamed of. I'm sure you've heard the expression, location, location, location. Well, this was the wrong location, only I didn't know it yet.
The case spent 5 years in the courts until the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in 2005 that government could in fact take private land from one individual and award it to another entity strictly for economic development.
What the Supreme Court basically said was our land was only our land until someone else could make better use of it and pay more taxes.
The early settlers in America had been victimized by tyrannical governments with no respect and little concern for the people or their rights, much less their property. Our founding fathers were determined that this would not be true in the United States. Those principles are just as important today as they were over 200 years ago.
I think private property is private. I think many people, many people, even today, are in the uniform of our country. And that's one of the rights, one of the reasons that they go. Private property is private, whether it be your home or your farm. In my particular case, my home's on the farm, and I'm just managing that farm for the good Lord, really. It took me a while to figure that out, but that's just the way it is.
I believe that if someone has worked hard, that it should be his decision if he wants to sell it or keep it. If you have a seller that is threatened with the possibility of his land being taken by eminent domain, and you have a buyer sitting there knowing that he can take it by eminent domain, if a good negotiation is, or a fair negotiation is not presented, to me that's unfair. I've always stood to the fact that there should be a willing buyer and a willing seller.
Many states have enacted laws limiting the powers of eminent domain to protect landowners' rights. Mississippi has not done so to this point. In several recent legislative sessions, eminent domain reform bills have been introduced but died before becoming law. So the Mississippi Farm Bureau spearheaded an effort to amend the Mississippi Constitution for eminent domain reform to keep individuals' property from being taken by the government and turned over to other private parties. More than 120,000 Mississippi voters signed a petition to put the reform measure on the next statewide ballot to let voters decide whether Mississippi should do what most other states have already done to protect private property. Because it is illegal to pass an initiative that changes the Bill of Rights, the current initiative is to prevent property taken by eminent domain from being turned over to private persons or businesses for a period of 10 years.
The kilo opened up the whole ballgame. Now all of a sudden, you could take the property perhaps for private economic development, for tax revenue generation, or presumably even for aesthetic purposes, which again seems to be offensive to the early understanding of the Constitution. But that was the court's decision, and we'll respect that decision. However, Mississippi thought it was necessary to pass new legislation that would give an additional constitutional protection, a state protection, if you will, to how eminent domain could be exercised. We wanted to be perfectly clear through our law that you could not take it, that is property, from private individual A and give it to private individual B, because that is not considered a traditional public use.
I've said many times, if you think it's okay to take a man off of his land, throw him out of his house when he is on the porch showing you a deed that he has to that land, if you think that's okay and you believe in that, you can vote to sustain the governor's veto, and you can stand with the economic developers and say, you know, it's okay that we do that. But if you truly want to protect private property rights, like most of the people in Mississippi do and have voiced their opinion in many avenues, mainly through the Farm Bureau Federation, that they do want private property rights, then I think that there's no problem in going to the polls and letting the people speak.
Abuses of power must be checked, and reforms to prevent them should be enacted. Eminent domain reform is badly needed in Mississippi to keep our government one that is of, by, and for the people. Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation is supporting this campaign to prevent eminent domain abuse and the protection of private property rights throughout the state. Please be a part of this historic and important effort to preserve and protect the fundamental principles of liberty. Vote yes on 31.
And that's all the time we have for this edition of Voices of Agriculture. We hope you've enjoyed the show and will be with us again next time. For all of us here at the Mississippi Farm Bureau, thanks for watching.